The talking goat that outsmarted a whole village. A story for African tales, untold truth. Have you ever heard of a goat that could talk like a human being? Not just bleeding me, but speaking with wisdom, exposing secrets, and teaching lessons that no one expected. In the busy African town of Okpoko, people woke up to find that the ordinary had turned extraordinary. A man's pride, a village's laughter, and a goat's strange gift all came together to create a story that would never be forgotten. This is not just a tale to make you laugh. It is a tale to make you think. Because sometimes, the truth we fear to hear may come from the most unlikely places. And sometimes, the smallest creature carries the biggest message. So sit back, listen carefully, and let us journey together into the story of the talking goat that outsmarted a whole village, a story of pride, laughter, and the power of truth. Okpoko was never quiet on a Saturday. The market was the heart of the town, beating with colors, sounds, and smells that tangled together like a song. There were stalls overflowing with tomatoes as red as sunset, piles of yams stacked higher than a child's head, and women balancing baskets of pepper on their heads as though they carried feathers. The air smelled of roasted groundnuts and fried akara, mixed with the sharp scent of dried fish and the sweetness of fresh pineapples. Everywhere, people bargained loudly, each one determined to prove they were smarter than the seller. Into this noise and laughter walked Baba Efe. He was not a man anyone could miss. His clothes were always neatly pressed, his shoes polished until they winked at the sun, and his mustache combed as though it had an ego of its own. People knew him for his loud voice, his quick temper, and his stubborn pride. He had only one goal that day: to buy a goat. Not just any goat, but the fattest and boldest goat in the entire market. For Baba Efe believed that whatever he owned had to make people talk. He moved from stall to stall, shaking his head at goats that were too skinny, rejecting those that looked too weak, and frowning at those that looked too ordinary. He wanted something different, something that would make his neighbors stare in envy. Finally, at the far end of the goat section, he found it. A goat with bright, intelligent eyes, standing tall, as if it were aware of its own importance. It was neither afraid of the noise nor bothered by the crowd. While other goats bleated and pulled against their ropes, this one stood calmly, chewing slowly as if it had nothing to prove. Baba Efe's chest swelled with satisfaction. This was the goat he had been looking for. Strong, fat, and somehow unusual. He bargained loudly with the seller, shouting until half the market turned to look. After much haggling, coins exchanged hands, and the rope was placed in Baba Efe's grip. He tied it tightly around his wrist and strutted away, the goat trotting behind him like a prince on parade. The people in the market watched him go, some smiling, others shaking their heads. They whispered among themselves, wondering why Baba Efe needed such a large animal when his compound was small. But Baba Efe didn't care. All that mattered was that he now owned the most impressive goat in Okpoko. Little did he know, as he marched proudly out of the market, that this very goat was no ordinary creature. It carried with it a secret that would soon turn Baba Efe's pride into confusion, his wealth into shame, and his entire village into a theater of laughter and lessons. The goat's bright eyes held a mystery, but Baba Efe was too busy smiling at himself to notice. And so, with the rope in his hand and the crowd behind him, Baba Efe led the goat home, stepping into a story that would make Okpoko famous for years to come. The sun was sliding down when Baba Efe returned home, pulling his new goat proudly through the gate of his compound. His neighbors glanced up from their evening chores, some pausing with buckets balanced on their heads, others leaning on their door frames. Everyone knew Baba Efe never did anything quietly, so the sight of him dragging home a fat goat was not surprising. What surprised them was the way he smiled at the animal as though it were a trophy. He tied the goat under the big mango tree that shaded his courtyard. The tree was old, its branches heavy with green fruit, its roots rising like veins across the sandy ground. It was the same tree where Baba Efe often sat in the evenings, bragging about his day. Now it would host his latest purchase. The goat settled calmly, chewing leaves with a steady rhythm, its bright eyes glancing around the compound like a visitor taking note of its new home. Baba Efe clapped his hands, dusting them off, and nodded in satisfaction. To him, the future was simple. The goat would grow fatter, impress his neighbors, and perhaps one day serve as meat for a great celebration. He stretched his legs, thinking of the stew, the pepper soup, and the envy this animal would inspire. But just as his mind swam in thoughts of pride and pleasure, something strange cut through the quiet. A voice. It was not the shrill bleat of an ordinary goat. It was not the whisper of the wind in the mango leaves. It was a clear, human-like voice, firm, calm, and almost amused. Baba Efe froze. His heart thumped against his ribs as he turned slowly, his eyes wide with disbelief. There, under the mango tree, stood the goat. Its jaws had stopped moving. Its bright eyes were fixed on him. And though its mouth barely opened, the sound came again. The goat had spoken. At first Baba Efe thought he was hearing things. He shook his head violently, rubbed his ears, and even muttered a short prayer. Perhaps hunger was making him hallucinate. Or maybe the long walk from the market had confused his senses. But the goat spoke again, in the same calm, deliberate tone. The rope slipped from Baba Efe's hand. He stumbled backward, staring as though lightning had struck at his feet. His pride melted into fear, and for a moment, he wanted to run. Yet curiosity pinned him to the ground. The goat, unbothered, bent its head and returned to chewing, as though nothing unusual had happened. The compound was quiet except for the distant sound of children playing on the street and the faint rhythm of a drum carried by the evening wind. Baba Efe sat on a stool, his eyes never leaving the goat. His mind raced in circles. Was this a blessing or a curse? Was he losing his senses? Or had he truly bought an animal touched by the supernatural? That night, sleep abandoned him. He tossed on his mat, his ears straining for another word. Each creak of the night seemed like a whisper. Each rustle of the mango leaves a sign that the goat would speak again. The moonlight spilled across the compound, painting the goat's figure in silver. And Baba Efe watched it with suspicion and awe. The more he stared, the more he felt that this goat was no ordinary creature. Its calmness was unsettling, its eyes too sharp, too knowing. A small shiver ran through his spine. What had he brought into his home? A gift, a curse, or something in between? By dawn, he was sure of only one thing. His life would never again be ordinary. The goat had spoken, and whether he liked it or not, this secret was too big to keep. Okpoko was about to witness a wonder, and Baba Efe was standing at the center of it. Morning in Okpoko always came with noise, the clanging of pots, the crowing of roosters, the shouts of women calling their children to fetch water. But that morning, something extra buzzed through the streets. Baba Efe's secret had slipped from his compound like smoke from a cooking fire, and now the whole town whispered about it. They say his goat speaks, one woman muttered at the water well. They say it greets you like a human, another added, balancing her bucket. And I heard it gives advice, a boy declared proudly, as though he had spoken with the animal himself. By mid-morning, Baba Efe's gate rattled with knocks and curious faces. At first, only a handful of neighbors came, peeking cautiously as though expecting the goat to breathe fire. But curiosity is like a drumbeat. It grows louder and draws a crowd. By noon, the courtyard was full. Children sat cross-legged on the ground, their eyes wide. Women stood with their hands on their hips, ready to run if things became too strange. Men folded their arms, trying to look serious but secretly eager to hear the wonder. The goat stood under the mango tree, calm as ever, its bright eyes surveying the crowd as though it were the host of the gathering. When it finally spoke, the courtyard erupted with laughter and gasps. Some screamed and jumped back, but most leaned closer, unable to resist the pull of the miracle.
The goat's words were sharp, clever, and strangely wise, leaving everyone both amused and impressed. Baba Efe, at first overwhelmed, quickly saw the opportunity. With the cunning of a businessman, he placed a wooden stool at the gate and began collecting small coins from those who entered. Children paid half price, though he grumbled that some of them asked too many questions. Soon his compound felt less like a home and more like a small theater. People jostled for space, clapping their hands in delight each time the goat opened its mouth. The laughter of that day rolled across Okpoko like thunder. People left Baba Efe's compound wiping tears of amusement from their eyes, eager to tell others what they had witnessed. By evening, more visitors had arrived, holding coins and curiosity in equal measure. Some came from nearby streets, others from distant corners of town. The goat had become a star, and Baba Efe basked in its glow. For the first time in his life, he felt powerful. No longer just a loud man with a polished mustache. He was now the proud owner of a talking goat. Pride swelled in his chest as he counted the money piling up in his pocket. He strutted around the compound with sunglasses perched on his nose, as though fame had already crowned him. Yet beneath the laughter and the coins, something deeper stirred. The goat did not simply entertain. Hidden in its words were truths, little hints that it was more than a comedian. But Baba Efe, blinded by his new fortune, paid no attention. For him, the only thing that mattered was that his compound had become the center of Okpoko's attention. What he did not realize was that the same mouth that brought him riches and laughter would soon bring him shame and tears. The goat had only just begun its work. News in Okpoko traveled like wind across dry grass. Within days, the tale of Baba Efe's talking goat leapt beyond the dusty streets and lively markets, climbing up to the ears of the palace. The chief of Okpoko was a man of wisdom and authority, known for his calm judgments and love for strange wonders. When he heard of the goat that could speak, he could not simply ignore it. He sent messengers with kola nuts and palm wine to summon Baba Efe and his remarkable animal. For Baba Efe, this was the crown of glory. He polished his shoes until they shone like mirrors, combed his mustache twice, and carried himself with the strut of a man stepping into history. He tied a cloth carefully over the goat's back, lifted it onto his shoulders, and marched proudly towards the palace, his chest swelling with pride. Behind him trailed curious villagers, eager to see how the miracle would perform before royalty. The palace courtyard was filled with anticipation. Attendants in fine traditional attire stood at attention, their eyes curious but respectful. Drummers tapped lightly on their drums, and the scent of burning incense hung in the air. The chief sat on his carved wooden throne, draped in flowing robes, coral beads shining on his neck and wrists. His eyes twinkled with both caution and amusement as Baba Efe bowed deeply before him, setting the goat down at his feet. All eyes turned to the animal. For a long moment it chewed lazily, as though the palace meant nothing to it. Then, with a calmness that hushed the courtyard, it lifted its head and spoke. Its words were polite, wise, and filled with the kind of respect only a well-trained courtier would offer. The crowd gasped, the attendants whispered among themselves, and even the chief leaned forward in surprise. Never before had such a thing been seen in Okpoko. The chief laughed, a deep, hearty sound that filled the courtyard. He praised the goat, calling it a wonder and a gift to the people. He offered kola nuts in its honor and declared that Okpoko had truly become famous. The drummers struck their drums with energy. The people clapped their hands. And Baba Efe stood tall, glowing with pride. His heart swelled so much that he barely noticed the words of the goat, which carried not just humor but a hint of deeper wisdom. From that day, Baba Efe was treated like a man of great importance. He walked through the town with his head held high, his goat trotting beside him like a bodyguard. Children ran after him, singing songs about the talking animal. Visitors arrived from faraway villages, bringing gifts in exchange for a chance to hear the wonder. Baba Efe, once just another stubborn man in Okpoko, now strutted like a king in his own right. But pride is a dangerous companion. While Baba Efe enjoyed the riches and fame, he did not see the shadow growing behind the laughter. The goat had been welcomed into the palace, but its tongue was not finished. Very soon, its words would turn from entertainment to exposure. And when truth begins to bite, even the loudest laughter quickly fades. The days that followed the palace visit were filled with endless excitement. People traveled from neighboring towns to see the miracle goat of Okpoko. Baba Efe's compound was like a fairground, always crowded, always noisy, always full of laughter. He had stopped farming completely, relying instead on the coins that poured in each day. His pockets jingled with wealth, and his ego grew taller than the mango tree shading his courtyard. But fame is like palm wine, sweet at first, but soon it begins to sour. It started with little comments. In the middle of a cheerful gathering, the goat would suddenly slip in a sentence that cut deeper than laughter. At the market, it exposed Mama Nkechi for adding too much water to her soup and still charging full price. People laughed loudly that day, but Mama Nkechi did not. She walked away with her face burning, angry that her secret was no longer safe. Another time, the goat revealed that a young boy had stolen mangoes and hidden them under his shirt. The crowd roared with amusement, clapping their hands as the boy squirmed. But the boy's mother was furious. She felt ashamed before her neighbors, and the laughter felt like stones thrown at her family. The goat spoke again and again, each time laying bare a truth that someone would have preferred to hide. It spoke about merchants who used false weights, tailors who measured carelessly, and men who spent more time at the drinking spot than in their own homes. With every word, laughter mixed with discomfort, and soon, the joy of the gatherings began to shrink. People still came, but now they came with unease. Each visitor wondered if the goat's sharp tongue would turn towards them. The crowd grew quieter, the laughter more forced, the smiles tighter. Slowly, the villagers began to avoid Baba Efe's compound altogether. The goat that once drew them in now kept them away. For Baba Efe, it was a nightmare. The same animal that had filled his pockets was now emptying them. Neighbors complained that the goat was spoiling their reputations. Merchants accused him of bringing bad luck to their trade. Mothers warned their children not to go near his house. The proud man who once strutted like a king now felt the cold stares of those around him. One evening, as the sun slid behind the rooftops, a restless crowd gathered outside his gate. Their voices rose in anger. They demanded that Baba Efe silence the goat before it caused more damage. Coins no longer clinked in his hands. Instead, stones rattled against his walls as warnings. His pride collapsed into fear, and he began to wonder if this goat was truly a blessing or a curse sent to ruin him. Inside the compound, the goat remained calm, chewing slowly under the mango tree as though nothing had changed. Its bright eyes carried no malice, only a steady, knowing light. It seemed to understand that its mission was never to entertain forever. Its mission was to confront, to challenge, and to awaken. And the time for that mission to end was drawing near. The night air in Okpoko was heavy with tension. A crowd had gathered outside Baba Efe's compound, their voices sharp with anger and frustration. Lanterns flickered in the dark, their flames casting restless shadows across the walls. Mothers folded their arms, muttering about how the goat had embarrassed them. Fathers clenched their fists, remembering how their secrets had been dragged into the open. Children peeked nervously from behind their parents, whispering about the magical animal that seemed to know everything. Inside the compound, Baba Efe paced up and down, sweat dripping from his forehead. His coins lay scattered on the floor, no longer bringing comfort. The same neighbors who once clapped for him were now ready to chase him out of town. His pride had turned to shame and his glory to fear. At the foot of the old mango tree, the goat lay quietly, chewing its food as though the chaos outside meant nothing. Its eyes glowed faintly in the moonlight, calm and unbothered. When the murmurs outside grew louder, the goat finally rose to its feet. Without fear, it stepped into the middle of the compound. The air grew still. Even the insects seemed to pause. Then, with a voice as clear as the ringing of a bell, the goat spoke, not jokes, not gossip, but truth. It reminded the villagers that lies may comfort for a while, but truth is what sets people free. It told them that cheating in the market may bring quick profit, but it destroys trust. It warned them that pride and pretense are like termites, slowly eating away at the walls of a house until it collapses. And then it spoke directly to Baba Efe. It told him that pride had blinded him, that he had chosen wealth over wisdom, and that no man ever prospers by feeding only his ego. The words cut through the night like thunder. Some villagers wept quietly, ashamed of their own hidden ways. Others bowed their heads, realizing how far they had strayed from honesty. Baba Efe sank to his knees, trembling with regret. For the first time in his life, he felt small, not because the goat had embarrassed him, but because the truth had finally humbled him. Then, as suddenly as it had arrived, the miracle ended. A soft breeze rustled through the mango leaves, and the goat's body shimmered faintly. Its bright eyes glowed one last time. And then, before the crowd could blink, it vanished into the night air. There was no rope, no shadow, no sound, only silence and the faint scent of mango, leaves swaying in the moonlight. The villagers stood frozen, their lanterns flickering in the stillness. Some gasped, others crossed themselves, and children clung to their mothers. Baba Efe remained on his knees, tears running down his face, whispering words of apology no one could hear. From that night forward, Okpoko was never the same. Merchants in the market measured fairly. Women cooked honestly, no longer adding water to soups to cheat their customers. Families lived with more openness, choosing truth over pretense. And Baba Efe, once the loudest and proudest man in town, became known for his humility. He no longer bragged, no longer strutted. Instead, he opened his courtyard as a place for neighbors to gather. Not to laugh at a talking goat, but to share real conversations and honest living. The tale of the talking goat lived on. Parents told it to their children, not just as a funny story, but as a warning and a guide. They said, "Remember still the goat of Okpoko. It spoke only truth, and when people rejected it, it disappeared. Let us not chase away truth from our own lives." And so, the villagers of Okpoko learned the final lesson. Truth may sting, but it heals. Pride may shine for a moment, but humility lasts forever. And sometimes, wisdom comes from the most unexpected places, even from the mouth of a goat. And that, my friends, is the story of the talking goat that outsmarted a whole village. It may have sounded funny, it may have made you laugh, but hidden inside the laughter is a lesson we all need to remember. Truth is not always sweet, but it is always necessary. Pride will lift us high for a moment, but humility will keep us standing strong for a lifetime. And sometimes, wisdom doesn't come from kings or scholars, it comes from the most unexpected places. So as you go about your day, ask yourself, what truth am I running away from? And what truth can I accept that will make me better? If you enjoyed this story and its lesson, don't keep it to yourself, share it with a friend. And if you want more untold African stories filled with laughter, wisdom, and truth, make sure you like this video. Subscribe to our channel and click the notification bell so you never miss the next tale. Until we meet again, remember, sometimes even a goat may carry the message you need most. Stay blessed and see you in the next story.